Welcome back to the channel of Truth, Trust and Transparency. Today I'm going to give you my 5-step plan that if you use property development, how quickly it can make you a millionaire compared to just the standard residential investing. Now, I always say this, with majority of the things you need to do, you always need to start in resi. It's easy to get into, low barrier to entry, low money needed in terms of capital. But for a lot of people, buy and hold or some buy and sell down plans, they're fine. And there's nothing wrong with doing that. For some people, they want to capitalize on things a lot quicker, get things moving a lot faster. And because of that, development is a really good tool to be able to harvest large chunks of capital in short amount of time frames, which you can be able to use to build and scale. I'm going to show you guys my 5-step plan that I use personally, and in order to generate wealth using both a mix of residential investing and residential development. I'm going to run you through that today. You're more than happy to take this framework and use it for your own journey. If not, it's something to think about, something to consider. Development definitely isn't going to suit everyone. It is said to be high risk. It's said to be high stress. It's said to have a lot of money required. However, if you know what you're doing, you can mitigate all of those risks. I'm going to walk you through it. Let me show you. So number one, and the first thing that you're going to do, a lot of people try to skip this step. Number one is you're going to start in resi. Start in residential property investing. You always need to build up some sort of base. 1, 2, 3, I'm going to say maybe it's 4. You need to start and build up a residential base. Why? Well, if I told you needed $300,000 to start off with a small scale development in cash, how long would it take you to save $300,000? For the majority of us, if you're on 100K, you pay $22,000 in tax, you're left with $78,000. You know, if you take a third of that, that's about 25 grand. If I told you needed 300 grand and you're saving $25,000 a year, there's nothing wrong with that. It's just going to take you a very long time to be able to get to 300,000. It's going to take you more than 10 years. Why are you starting resi? Because easy barrier to entry, quick to get into, and then our favorite term, leverage. We put that money, that 50, 60, 80, that first bit of money that we save up into something that then controls a larger asset, which is then growing in value. So if I spend $70,000, $80,000 and get into my first property, and then that property is then worth, say, 500 grand. If that property grows 10% in the first year, I've made 50,000. However, again, for that previous example, if I'm saving up every dollar I can, 30, 40% of my salary, I might only be able to save 20, 25 grand. I'm leveraged into the property that is growing at a high rate. So I always say to people, start with your resi base. You need something to fall back on. You need something to be able to start you off and leverage. Number two, step 2 is going to be the harvest/sell down. What do I mean by this? After we've built a substantial portfolio, then we need to harvest equity or do some sort of sell down. Now, for me personally, I've always wanted to get into property development. I don't want to be one of these people that has 60 properties worth 300 grand and has 60 headaches. To me, I see that as an absolute failure. If you can do it in 3, 4, or 5 really big, juicy assets, I would prefer that than the big headaches. So you either need to harvest the equity out of these properties, or maybe you need to sell down a couple, harvest a bit of equity to get that capital base. You need to get that capital base. The quickest way to do that, equity releases, sell down. I did both when I was working my 9-to-5 job. Harvested, sold down some assets to build that capital base so I know I could get into development. So step number 2, harvest, sell down. Step number 3 is going to be, and as easy as it is, develop property. Once I've got that capital base, then I go boom, and I can start to develop. Now, you've seen enough videos on my channel, or if you haven't already, go back and watch them. But In property development, I can do projects, especially small scale infill with no basements, in a sort of 12 to 18 month period. In New South Wales, for example, we do have a complying development certificate, which can be done through a private certifier, which means we don't even have to go to council, and we get these things approved in a matter of weeks, compared to, I've heard horror stories of people say, oh, it took 12 months in council to get this thing approved. What an absolute nightmare. So then we can get off and we can start developing. The next thing we do after we've started developing, and step number 4, is, my friends, called the double down method. The reason I say this and what it means is, once you do the first project, and like in that previous example or previous vid I posted up, if you did that project where you made 500 grand in capital, I always think of it like this. You do one project, let's just say 500 in, you make 600 or 700 grand. It costs you 500 or 600 to get in. You make 600 or 700 grand. After you finish that project, my friends, this is why it's so powerful. I then have my original 500K, I get that back, and then I get, say, 600, 700 grand, take off your tax. You then have another equity play of 500 grand to play with. I put in 500 grand, I do the project, then I get my money back, and then I get my profit. I can then take those 2 lots of money and use them for 2 more developments. Then after I do 2 more developments, this development here, think about it this way. I do that second development, and then from this one here, again, I get my money back and I get my profit. I invest that into 2 more projects. For the second one, I get that back. I get the money back I put in, I get my profit, I put that into 2 more projects. So already 12 months, I can get and start to scale into quite a number of projects by doubling down, by rolling that money back in, rolling that money back in, rolling that money back in. You're gonna feel like when you're starting property development, you're gonna feel poor because you finish one project, you've got another one lined up, you roll that money back in to keep going, keep going, keep going, keep going. So that's something that you can do there, is to roll that money back in again and again and again. And then the next step that I believe is the best step is invest. And number 5 is then invest in larger assets. Because let's be honest, resi investing is good, it's safe in houses, but is extremely slow. You think if you buy a $500,000 house, if it grows by 5% on average, that first year, you're making 25K in a year. 25K, 500K. 25K, 500K. You'd need 20 houses to make what you do in this project compared to this one. So obviously, once we get into this stage where we have a multiple number of projects running and finishing, then we start to invest in larger assets. Now, what do I mean by that? Different gravy to property investing in the sense that I might finish one of these, right? 500 grand. Now, I could buy 2 houses, and then I could come and put attached to the houses 2 granny flats, and I could pay for the houses 20% deposits, and I could do the granny flats in cash, and that would buy me, let's just say 25K in passive income per granny flat. Now, the houses, 20% deposit, they cover themselves. It could be a trust structure. I can come and do $175,000. I could come and do $175,000 granny flat and go, boom, granny flat straight away. I then am buying passive income straight away. That's $50,000. And that might be from one of these projects. Then I could use, say, for example, the profit from these 2 projects, $1 million. I could then come and get a factory, right? Factory, $2 million factory. I could do a 50% deposit on it. Now, a $2 million factory that, my friends, is yielding, let's just say 7%. It's going to bring in 140K of income. However, because I've put down a 50% deposit, I have $1 million worth of debt. Now, at the moment, interest rates are about 5.7%. So let's just call it interest rates are down to an average of 5%. The debt is going to cost me 50K, right? Debt is going to cost me 50K. It's bringing in 140K. I just bought myself $90,000 of passive income from one commercial asset and two resis. So commercial asset 90, resis 25 grand each on the granny flats. I've got $140,000 in passive income on three assets. Well, I don't know if you count the granny flats as additional, but three addresses. So when people say they have the 10s, 20s, 50 and more property portfolios and they reckon that they're positive income, one, they're probably not, because when you look at the net yields in resi, it is unlikely. The reason that they are able to keep buying is because they have those businesses, those buyer's agency businesses, for example, or some sort of large business to supplement the negative geared property portfolio. But the reason that I do it in development is because, as we can see, these projects just really quickly, after the first year, after the second year, I could go and go, boom, 140 grand passive income or something like that. Very similar. And then I'd still have Mr. over here to the next year go out and do two more projects and then build it back up. All whilst I'm being paid 140 grand from my property portfolio. So that's why I think the blend of resi investing and property development is a way to turbocharge and get into larger assets. It allows you to put down large chunks of deposit or some things in cash so you can immediately start enjoying passive income. Now people go, oh, but the 500K, you could have spread it across and stretched it and bought 6 properties. I get it. But the reason that you're buying those 6 properties, you're going to hold them for 5, 10, 20 years for them to then, once the debt is paid down or once the rent grows enough to be paying your passive income. The whole reason we invest in property, or me anyway, is so that we can have these cash producing assets. The issue you're trying to solve by buying the 6 properties is pulling up enough capital to then take it into those larger commercial properties. By doing property development, you're actually solving that issue. You've got the large chunks of capital. You've got them every 12 to 18 months. If you're then using that to get into assets, you're buying assets not to grow the capital base, but to produce income. So now you're putting that money down and going, boom, 40, 50, 60% deposits outright in cash so that you can start enjoying passive income from the get-go. You don't have that in resi, but that's why you start in resi. So that, my friends, is your 5-step plan if you want to combine property investing and property development and turbocharge the speed at which you can move and start to buy these assets that can produce, here, 140K. That's not to mention, if you can live off 90K, perfect. Then we can use 50K here to pay off down each of those houses that are connected to the granny flats, and then that might add another 50 grand into there. So then you've got, 190 grand in a matter of years. Or you could just say, look, I'm done developing. I finished the $2 million. You could buy that outright commercial property, 2 million, and get the 140. Like, there's so many more options if you go down a development route. As always, guys, questions, queries, thoughts, concerns, conflicting opinions. If you disagree with me, drop a comment below. Happy to have a chat about it. As usual, I'll see you guys tomorrow. And if you've taken any value from this video, this breakdown, I would appreciate it if you hit subscribe. It's hard work, but I'll see if I can get there. I'm posting every single day to try to get to that amount. So let me know in the comments, and if you can subscribe, I'll love you for it. Appreciate it, guys. We'll talk soon.